5 Missouri Tigers on Phil Steele's All-SEC team, but one of them isn't Brady Cook. What do I think this means for the Tigers' chances this season and more right now on Locked On Mizzou?
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hail, you true sons and daughters. I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And speaking of hoops, we got to talk some more scheduling. Could we finally be getting a long-awaited, at least by some, Missouri versus St. Louis University basketball game? Got to talk about that and why I'm feeling optimistic about the Tigers at this moment. Also, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. The terms apply. And let's talk about that Phil Steele All-SEC football team. 5 Tigers made the cut, which is an impressive number, especially when you consider that Missouri's quarterback, a huge reason why I and many people around the country are optimistic about Missouri's chances, is directly related to Missouri quarterback Brady Cook. You got to love the experience. You got to love the improvement last season. You also have to love his ability to not only throw the football, but run it as well. He's a multi-talented athlete for sure. But when you look at it, you shouldn't be surprised that Cook didn't make at least the preseason cut here for Phil Steele. And frankly, he probably won't anywhere else, I'm guessing, either, at least not in the top 3 teams. If you just look over at FanDuel Sportsbook, you're talking at least 7 SEC quarterbacks. Just a quick look there with a better Heisman Trophy odds than Brady Cook at 35-1. This is another reason I keep pounding the table a little bit. If you're going to try to find a value on the board for the Heisman Trophy, well, if it's a Missouri Tiger, then it's clearly Luther Burden at 100-1, simply because of a number of different reasons. One of them being that Brady Cook, you just stack him up against the rest of the SEC quarterbacks right now. He's just not getting as much hype as the others. And you know what? Hype does matter a lot when it comes to the Heisman Trophy. I think Burden is going to be the one who's going to be getting his bigger share of it, at least to start the season. But again, you look at this fivesome here. Luther Burden, no surprise there. Of course, Triston Newson, linebacker. Armand Membou, the right tackle for Missouri. Daylan Carnell, and also Johnny Walker, a couple guys who wreaked a lot of havoc in the Cotton Bowl. In fact, I'd say one thing all 5 of those gentlemen have in common is that they all played very, very well during the Cotton Bowl. Triston Newson, of course, took him a while to get a significant amount of snaps, really took some injuries at linebacker there for Missouri for Newson to really start to play well. But it was hard not to notice that the Missouri defense continued to perform well down the stretch, even without the services of Tyron Hopper, for example, for the last couple ball games or so. So all of those guys, again, Carnell, Walker, Membou, even Burden, who had one of his probably least impressive games statistically in the box score, still caught an absolute laser beam for a touchdown pass in close quarters, clutch moment, 3rd down and goal, I do believe, from Brady Cook for a touchdown. So to me, every single one of those guys looked really good in the Cotton Bowl. I don't know. Maybe Phil Steele paid particular close attention to that game. But regardless, it is impressive to see Phil Steele still out there and being relevant after all these years. Is it not? The changing landscape of sports media. Of course, we can all remember, if you're my age, picking up those magazines this time of year and diving through them to learn about the rest of college football. Obviously, so much has changed, for real. Impressive to see Phil Steele still doing his thing. Well, Andrew Babalola is one of the most sought-after offensive linemen in this current high school class, without a doubt. He lives in Overland Park, Kansas, of course, just across the state lines. Missouri very much involved in his recruiting. And often these days, if Missouri's involved with an offensive lineman, they've got a great shot at the young man. But all indications are from various different outlets that Babalola trending toward the Tigers. In fact, The Athletic / the New York Times, speaking of the changing media landscape, is it The Athletic or the New York Times at this point? Well, that conglomerate was having some updates about Andrew Babalola. And again, despite Stanford being a not-so-good football team the past 3 seasons, 3 wins in each of the past 3 seasons, they are really rolling out the Cardinal red carpet for Babalola, for sure. And not only is Andrew Luck, their former great quarterback, out there giving them the, again, the Cardinal red carpet treatment there. Also, Condoleezza Rice out there, part of the College Football Playoff Committee, of course, former Secretary of State for George W. Bush as well. Frankly, I'm surprised they didn't bring out Dr. Thomas Sowell to really seal the deal. But hey, that's just me. Regardless, all of that is just an indication that, again, it sure seems like this is somebody Stanford really, really wants, and they're trying everything they possibly can to get him. Sure seems like it's working right now. Now, if you're currently watching this program on YouTube, if you're looking behind me, obviously you can tell Missouri has had a lot of different helmets over the last decade plus, especially since entering the Southeastern Conference. Well, it's really gone pretty wild, to be honest with you. Not only the helmets, but the uniform combinations as well. If you're a more traditionalist, well, you probably don't like this. If you're maybe on the younger, maybe more fashion-forward type person, you probably love it. I probably fall somewhere in the middle. Certainly the collector's part of me, well, it's like catnip. I really cannot help myself. Clearly, I have a problem. But you know what? The problem has really been for Missouri during this era. To me, unlike Oregon, when they started the trend of basically, hey, uniform announcements, different helmets, and uniform combos virtually every single week. Well, Oregon, one of the reasons they were able to capitalize on that trend, and number one, they were the first to do it. Hey, good for them. Number two, they had the NCAA football video game behind it. That actually makes Oregon, especially back then, one of the most fun teams to play with because it's not just a once-a-week thing when you play college football in the video game. Heck, you can play 4 or 5 games in a day if you're really putting off that term paper. Believe me, I've been there. I can speak from experience. But seriously, the young guys love that kind of stuff. And to be able to not only use uniform combinations that have actually been worn by, for example, Missouri and Oregon in the past, well, in this new college football video game, you're going to be able to take, for example, one of these script helmets behind me where it says Tigers, for example. Well, you could put those with combinations of uniforms that Missouri has absolutely never worn before. White on the black Tiger script helmet, or gold, all gold uniforms with a white script helmet. Heck, maybe that stuff looks horrendous, but as a one-off in a video game, just see what it looks like. I can just tell you from experience, that kind of stuff is fun to play around with. And really, the Tigers are going to be one of the premier squads, I think, for just casual football fans, casual gamers, and college football fans who don't necessarily have at least a blue blood team that they're going to rock with. For example, if you're a UMass fan, hey, God bless you, but you know what? It's going to be hard this season. EA Sports has come out and said it's going to be harder to make UMass into a blue blood dynasty. Recruiting is going to be a little more realistic this year. So why not take a team like Missouri that already has a quality current squad, but is a more realistic challenge to take the Tigers and rise them up the ranks from, say, maybe the 8th or 9th best recruiting class in the SEC to maybe getting in the top 3, to maybe start, competing with Georgia, that kind of thing. Because frankly, at a certain point, it gets a little boring to start off your dynasty mode at the very top with Alabama or Georgia God bless Alabama and Georgia fans out there. I'm sure they love it. But as a casual, as somebody who doesn't have anything to root for necessarily, I really think the Tigers are going to be an easy team to root for this fall. Let's hope Missouri can take advantage of it on every level by winning a whole bunch of games. And a loud and proud element of the St. Louis Billikens fan base has really wanted to face Missouri in basketball for quite a while now. And it seems like they may actually get their wish this coming season in Kansas City. Let's talk about that and some more thoughts on Missouri basketball coming up here in just a little bit. First, though, let's talk some golf because let me tell you something. The PXG Black Ops driver, PXG was nice enough to invite me to their beautiful store in Overland Park. Let me tell you, the PXG Black Ops is a game changer. Just the amount of adjustability on that thing is so impressive. Not only the craftsmanship, how good it feels in your hands, but Jacob just was constantly working with me, adjusting the lie angle, adjusting the head, the shaft, everything about the driver until I was just piping it down the middle. And I'm just telling you, PXG made me a believer. They'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/lockedonmizzou to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City, 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/lockedonmizzou to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/lockedonmizzou. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. Promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See store for details. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. For instance, if you want to see the Cardinals, perhaps you're a Chicago listener, hey, go to Wrigley Field tomorrow. I can get you in tomorrow for $20 less than what you would pay. Just keep listening to find out exactly how. Again, the lowest price guarantee or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime, clearly the easiest way to buy tickets, so take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And Dennis Gates and the Tiger basketball squad scheduled to play at the T-Mobile Center in KC this coming November for the Hall of Fame Classic. This is a 2-day event with 4 teams. Quite simply, the winners play in day 2, the losers play in day 2. Well, it looks like the St. Louis Billikens also recently announced they're going to be playing Wichita State specifically in the Hall of Fame Classic. So that means it's quite possible that the Tigers and the Billikens will play, though somewhat oddly, in Kansas City, not in Columbia or St. Louis. I know this will certainly whet the appetite, at least on some level, of some Billikens fans who seem to think Missouri has been ducking them for years. So I am genuinely, truly excited for all of them. But in other scheduling news, Missouri is going to face Cal in, yes, the ACC-SEC Challenge. Just truly a classic SEC-ACC matchup between Missouri and Cal. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. Cal in the Atlantic Coast Conference has got to be the most ridiculous thing I've frankly ever heard, but I guess we're going to have to get used to it. I'll just say this. It would be a lot more fun if Missouri would actually get to play one of the teams in the North Carolina Triangle, from my perspective. Obviously, the Tar Heels, Duke, NC State, Wake Forest. but I'm not exactly going to hold my breath. Syracuse would be cool too, by the way. Missouri definitely has some history there, a Sweet 16 matchup, maybe even a couple of them, I think. And now that I think about it, I think Missouri played Syracuse, a couple times in the Sweet 16 over the years. Also, Virginia defending national champion would be fun, or I should say a former national champion. But California, not exactly a lot of juice there. Now, obviously, if you remember, Dennis Gates, Cal is his alma mater. So that's interesting from his perspective, I guess. Helps some people write a few inches of copy. But other than that, not a lot about playing Cal that is exactly getting me excited. However, I will say this for Missouri's basketball history with Cal, and this is something I just put together right at this moment. I swear I wasn't even thinking about this, but I did recall that in two of Missouri's best seasons, especially in semi-recent history, well, that included games against Cal where Missouri absolutely destroyed them. For example, we're talking solid California teams, including the Bears were, under Mike Montgomery, the 30th best team in the entire country in 2009, according to KenPom. Well, Missouri that season absolutely smashed them in Mizzou Arena, 93-66. Well, the famous 2012 Tigers, Frank Haith's first year, the top offense in the country. Well, we figured out fairly quickly that that was a really good Missouri team, in part because, well, an early victory against a very good Cal team, a team that was top 15 when Missouri played it. Again, KenPom ended up right around 29th or 30th in the rankings there. Well, Missouri, again, absolutely destroys the Bears 92-53. So if it just so happens that Missouri this season beats Cal by like 25 or 30 points or something in the SEC ACC Challenge, you've heard it here first. If that happens, we've got a special season on our hands. And speaking of next year's Missouri squad, you know what? Yesterday I actually was interviewed by someone with Como Magazine about my podcast, more or less. And so I'll let you guys know when that article is about to hit the newsstands. But one of the questions I was asked right at the end was just simply, hey, how you feeling about Missouri basketball this coming year? And you know what? I kind of rode the fence a little bit, I have to be honest. And after I thought about it for a while, after the interview, I started thinking, you know what? Screw it. I'm tired of riding the fence. I'm going to go with my original instinct, which after Dennis Gates, his first season with Missouri, I thought, screw it. We're back. This is Missouri basketball now. We're going to be good again. Dennis Gates is the guy. This is awesome. All aboard the Dennis Gates hype train. Well, obviously some 0-19 is going to throw some sticks into the gears of your bicycle. No question about that. But really, last season was, as Bill Simmons likes to say, the season from hell. Just simply nothing seemed to go right for Missouri. Not trying to obviously deflect all blame, of course, from Missouri and Dennis and everybody else, but I just think there were a lot of reasons that we lost. Some of them were out of our control, some of them within our control. But you know what? I'm just sort of at this moment anyway, just choosing to be optimistic, especially after the transfer portal offseason Missouri had. I think they solved some of their biggest issues in a lot of ways, especially defensively from last season at the point of attack, just the ability. Missouri won't be getting a small guard switched on to a bigger player for an easy jump shot at the end of these close games next season. I just don't see that happening, number one. But a lot of good additions, and also, frankly, I'm just really optimistic about these freshmen, this recruiting class coming in. Hopefully, I'm not expecting any of them to light the world on fire in their first season, but I'm expecting there to be a lot more hope after this coming season than this last season. So, I don't know, maybe it's just the time of year, now that we're deep into the offseason, the stink of last season is dissipated just a tiny bit, but I'm feeling optimistic at the moment. So I'm off the fence. I'm choosing to believe that Missouri, its reality is closer to year one than year two of Gates. And if there hasn't been enough change in college football and basketball for you in the last few years, how about private equity? Are you ready for it? Well, it could be coming to the Big 12 a lot sooner than a lot of us would have thought. Let's talk about that after these quick words. According to Dennis Dodd at CBSSports.com, the Big 12 is considering selling a large stake of the conference, as much as 15 to 20% in the league, to a Luxembourg-based private equity firm for a big old pile of cash, as much as $1 billion. Again, according to Dennis Dodd at CBS Sports. Obviously, just a whole lot of interesting things that this would open up here. And one comment I saw under this article, it said, well, at least it's not the Saudis, referring to the Luxembourg-based private equity firm. And I will say this, that's a funny comment. Number one, it made me giggle a little bit. But you have to say, even just based on the PIF down there in Saudi Arabia, obviously Live Golf is not exactly setting the world on fire. I'd say that's been probably a failure at this point in terms of at least advancing the Saudis' goals. Now, it's certainly got a lot more money in the pockets of Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy and the guys on the PGA Tour, even the guys beyond who didn't take the Live money. Hey, it's been good for them. The guaranteed money on the PGA Tour itself has gone up significantly. And by the way, WWE is doing just fine. It's now in year 6 or 7 of having an annual event in Saudi Arabia that nets it as much money basically as a WrestleMania does every year, just to put the business in perspective there. And PR-wise, doesn't seem to have hurt WWE's business domestically either. Domestically, they're killing it and doing as well as they have in years. But it also does make me feel better. If you're a fan of college football, of course, as I am, obviously a former member and longtime member of the Big 12/Big 8 was Missouri. Now, of course, that conference with 18 teams, I believe, or 16. No, it's 18 in the Big 10, right? 16 in the Big 12. Regardless, just a very wild amalgamation of teams there. But I will say this company, this Luxembourg company, is pretty legit. They've definitely done business in some major sports leagues across the world, including the Spanish football league La Liga and also the Premiership of Rugby, which is the main rugby league in England, which is a huge deal in England. If you're not aware, rugby is probably akin to, the popularity of baseball or basketball, for instance, at this point. Obviously, soccer, aka football, is number one. Rugby's a huge deal over there. And obviously La Liga is the top league in all of Spain. You're talking teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona, some huge clubs and name brands there. So this isn't just some fly-by-night organization here. And again, hey, Luxembourg, a little better for PR than the Saudis. I'll certainly agree with you there, than the Saudi family specifically I'm talking about here. So my point here is that, yeah, this is wild, absolutely. But I have to say, a part of me really admires what the Big 12 and its leadership is doing right now. For as much as I'm a college football traditionalist, at this point, the Big 12 is all about survival, and not just survival, but hopefully thriving and continuing to be either the third best or at very least the fourth best football league in the country. And I think this is a move, that type of cash influx to their members. I mean, that is the type of thing that helps you remain, at least be somewhat competitive with the Big Ten and the SEC. And it's the kind of thing that it's the kind of wild move that you have to make in order to compete with those behemoths. So a part of me really admires what the Big 12 is doing here. As a traditionalist of college football, it certainly does make me nervous. I'm sure it makes a lot of you nervous too. But again, as a wrestling fan, it made me nervous when the WWE started messing around with the Saudi family over there in particular. So far, so good. So I don't know. I'm a little bit more open-minded on the whole thing than maybe a lot of other traditional college football fans are. But regardless, hey, tell me what you think. Hit me up on social media at Locked On Mizzou. Obviously, the YouTube comments below this as well, or Locked On Mizzou at lockedonmizzou@gmail.com. So until next time, I am John Miller, and thanks as always for listening to Locked on Mizzou.